Well, look at that. Look at that, Alex. We are live.
We're live.
We'll do the thing that we always do. We'll give it just a minute before we do all the proper introductions and we start going through everything. And just maybe if we can get some feedback from everybody in chat, maybe Kristen can let us know as well how we sound, how we look, making sure everything is working properly. We don't want any technical difficulties here.
Yeah, how's my hair?
Your hair looks way better than mine. That's why I have a hat on. You also have much more hair than I do, so that's part of it as well. You were blessed with good hair genes. I was not. I was blessed with great beard genes, but not on the top of my head, unfortunately. So
I think if I let mine grow out, I don't have the patience to be very groomed and sculpt a beard the way that you have. It's
a process, man.
Yeah, I don't have process. So I just set that I have a guard, a particular size on the cutters, and that's the extent of it.
Yeah, I kept mine short for a really, really long time, mainly just because of work. And then when I didn't have to anymore, I was like, it's over. I'm growing it out. It's done. Let's do this. Awesome. Charlie in chat says Alex's hair is beautiful and that we sound fantastic. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the live CASAA Advocacy Update podcast. I am Logan, joined by Alex Clark. We have lots of fun stuff to talk about today. Lots and lots of fun stuff to talk about. It's usually not all that fun. We have a few fun things, though, I guess. But
yeah, we have some interesting things. I don't know about fun. It's been a newsy week, so
yeah,
so we got that.
But I guess now that we know we sound good and we're ready to go, we're just going to start how we usually start. We've got Alex giving us the rundown for legislation this week. What do we got going on, Alex?
Yeah, I'm taking a moment here to set up my screen and be ready to share. And there we go. So
look at that.
The quick legislative rundown, not following in order here on the blog, but we'll start with Missouri, which has I think this hearing is on Monday, or Wednesday, April 7th. Oh, we already had the hearing. Sorry. So this happened. And the witness forms are no longer a big deal, but this was preemption in Missouri. This would prevent local governments from enacting really unscientific vaping bans and all of the really unscientific stuff that local governments have been doing. And so this would have done that. The note to add about this is that Missouri is more than halfway through their session. And so there's not a high probability of either the Tobacco 21 or there's another bad bill out there or this bill actually getting across the finish line. So this is just a quick update on Missouri. The next bill that we have is a 75% wholesale tax in Alaska. This is HB 110. There was a hearing on Friday. I did not attend. I was busy with some other projects. But 75% wholesale, kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
I'll need to follow up and provide an update to this and see what the results of the hearing are. Sometimes it just ends up no action taken. There's just a discussion about it and public testimony. So I will update this and perhaps we need to widen this to the entire legislature. And so that is Alaska. It is still listed as in Finance Committee. So
okay.
The next one we have is Texas HB 211. This is a 5 cent per milliliter tax. A lot of people may think, well, 5 cents isn't all that bad. The problem with this is that often this is going to sort of set the tone or make it easier for the state to come back and raise the tax later. And also just the fundamental justification for opposing these taxes are why should people pay extra for products that are helping them improve their health? And yeah. So
Yeah, and like you said, it's we talked about the boiling frog a few weeks back. I guess a small tax to start. A lot of people would say, that's okay. We'll take that as long as you leave all this other stuff alone. But it never just gets left alone. That's just where it starts, and then we continually boil the frog.
Yeah, this is it's typically the larger companies that are amenable to a small tax like this. I remember we're talking like 5-6 years ago. Tobacco companies were interested in that strategy of sort of give them their pound of flesh and they'll kind of leave us alone. That didn't actually happen. There's a couple of states where things have not progressed too horribly, but generally that strategy is not very good. It might buy you some time, but it doesn't. I mean, about the most that you can say promoting something like that is that the industry is willing to come to the table and negotiate over, common sense regulations. But as from the consumer standpoint, we oppose extra taxes. There's really no question about it. On top of that, states bring in plenty of money from the master settlement agreement and tax revenue from cigarettes alone, that they should be able to pay for any, compliance enforcement, or of course, we'll get into the education campaigns later. So states already have the money. There's really no reason for, vapors to pick up that tab. So moving right along.
Swiftly. There we go.
Oh, and just to remind folks in Texas, this is a hearing on Monday, April 12th at 10 a.m. We have linked to the comment form and a very specific instruction here. This is just the House public comment form. So it's not on a specific bill. You have to write in the first line of your comment that you are writing in opposition to HB 211. Just to keep it fair, if you happen to be someone who supports this, I would prefer it if you didn't. But if you do, you can write that you support it. But we're encouraging our members to please write in opposition to this tax.
And that's where they should put that right in the subject, right in the initially, right out of the get-go, first thing.
Well, we'll take a look at the form. So you have, the standard stuff. This is for Texas residents only. Please be honest and be from Texas. And name, address, phone number, all of that. So all of this is required. And they specify here, this has always caused some confusion in the past, but if you are representing yourself, please write self in your occupation. And then, of course, you have your comment section here at the bottom, 3,000 characters. Use that first line to state that you are writing in opposition to HB 211. And then, of course, the typical things that we say, your talking points. Basically, tell your story, tell them what increased costs will mean for you and your access to safer nicotine products. Yeah.
Awesome.
The next one is going to be, I'm trying to find my, I don't know if I brought up the article. I'm just going to
throw this out there. I could not live like you with that many tabs open.
This is like every day, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't think I opened it. Here we go. Montgomery County, Maryland. Those who've been following vaping for a while, at least the policy side of this, may remember several years ago, Montgomery County was one of the early municipalities that enacted a tax. This is a 30% wholesale tax. And surprise, surprise, it did not successfully drive down youth experimentation.
And it also doesn't seem like it just stopped there. Weird.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's never enough,
Nope.
Especially when you're talking about tax revenue. So the council is coming back and they want to double the tax. It's kind of like, it's like we need to ban it more.
Yeah.
Like the ban didn't work the first time, so if we can just ban it harder.
Well, it's like the idea of banning vitamin E acetate in nicotine vapes.
Yeah.
Like that bill. Like okay.
Kind of pointless.
What does that do? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna try to make the thing that's illegal more illegal because it was only in illicit THC vapes.
Well, vitamin E acetate is not illegal.
Sure, I know it's a cosmetic product or whatever, but the idea behind it was essentially like, let's make these illicit products more illegal or whatever. Like,
yeah, again, it's not like folks who are manufacturing those products on, in an illicit environment or in a dark underground environment,
or just on their couch or wherever they're doing it.
Yeah, it's not like they're paying much attention to the law to begin with. So,
exactly.
So anyway, I will likely get something up about this. There's a public hearing on April 27th at 1:30 p.m. And look for, if you're in Montgomery County, Maryland, look for an engagement from us next week. Yeah. So Minnesota, moving right along to Prior Lake, Minnesota. They have
before it was a lake.
It's the first lake before the next lake.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if there's like an after lake.
Sorry, the name of the town or whatever has nothing to do with.
I don't know, and I really don't want to get caught out.
I just like the name Prior Lake.
We're gonna find out that like Mr. Pryor, won the Nobel Prize for something and saved a bunch of children, and then we're just making fun of his name. I don't want to be that guy.
I don't know.
But anyway, back to the serious business at hand. Prior Lake has banned the sale of flavored vaping products. And just to give you an idea of what this omniscient body of data-driven city councilors actually is, I pulled up a picture of the city council. It's 4 people and the mayor. So 4 people and the mayor came together and decided that banning flavors for your own good and for your children's own good was the right thing to do. And they did this with a model ordinance produced by the Public Health Law Center. Remember that the next time that industry, or really this applies to just about any issue, just remember that the next time people are griping about, oh, well, this company, they wrote the legislation. This happens all the time. It doesn't matter what side you're on. It's usually either someone from industry or a special interest group that is shopping around model legislation. It happens on both sides, the blue team and the red team. Everybody does it. It's not special. It's one of those statements that's meant to make you think like, yeah, they're really evil. They pre-wrote this legislation. That's bad. It should be decided by the people and the experts in the town. No, this was written by the Public Health Law Center, which has a very obvious anti-tobacco agenda, and they managed to convince these 5 people that they needed to ban vaping. There's a little bit of background if you dig into the minutes and the agendas. It sort of tells this tale of the city moving very aggressively to do this, starting in I think December of last year, or maybe even a little bit before. And then when a public hearing was held, there was so much outpouring of opposition to this that they actually had to delay it for a month. And so this would have been voted on in March. But because of so many comments against the flavor ban, they had to push it to this week, and they did, and they voted on it. Is the 5th this week? Yeah, it was Monday. So Prior Lake, Minnesota. Sorry, but yeah. These 4 people decided that you don't deserve.
And that's a good example too. Like, we've been talking so much about preemption and things like that, and local governments deciding these things as opposed to relying on the state, which has more resources, is better equipped, things like that. And like you said, this is 4 people and the mayor made this public health decision.
Yeah, I mean, we can split hairs and talk about all of the staff and the city departments involved and how they listen to all of the comments and so on. But at the end of the day, it comes down to those 5 people. So
Right.
yeah, and that's not a thorough review of the policy. The folks that presented the model ordinance to them are trading on their reputations as a group of lawyers, as people who have been engaged in this fight for decades. They're trading on their credibility. That in I think we can just look at the past 10 years, and I know people who've been involved in this fight for much longer will say it's not just the past 10 years, it's been the whole thing. But their credibility, it actually, I mean, I know they went to college, they have their law degrees and stuff, but as far as making the right decisions and pushing the right policies in this fight, they're dead wrong. And so I don't know what the word is when you earn something but you didn't really earn it. That's
You could just say that, because I don't know what the word is either.
Yeah, I know there's like a $20 way to say that, but I just don't have it. So anyway, yeah, I'm completely off the rails here, but I will bring it back to the legislative update, I promise. And yes, Kristen dropped a note in our private chat. I did skip over Wisconsin because I wanted to save it for last, because this is a big one. So I'll get to the screen share here. We have an engagement up for Wisconsin. If you are in Wisconsin, please check this out. The budget negotiation season is starting in Wisconsin. They had their first hearing on Friday. Again, busy with other projects. I did not see how that went. But we have, well, here's a little bit of the budget process. If you're curious and you want to dig into the budget process, I recommend checking out Ballotpedia. They have a pretty good breakdown here, and I provided some of that information in the latest updates and history section. But here's the thing that everybody needs to check out. This is the meeting schedule. So we've had Friday, April 9th. The next ones are closer to the end of the month. So the 21st, the 22nd, and the 28th. The Rhinelander and Menominee, those are the 21st and 22nd respectively. And then you have the statewide virtual hearing on the 28th. And it looks like they're still figuring out how that's going to work. So this is a proposal from Governor Evers. It is a 71% wholesale tax. This is tax parity with what in other states is other tobacco products, which is sort of a catch-all for anything that isn't a cigarette and isn't a cigar. Remember, the cigar lobby is very powerful, and they've been around for a very long time, and so they tend to negotiate a lot better, a lot more effectively than just about anybody else in the tobacco space. This would fold vaping into the same tax scheme as roll your own, little cigars, other combustible products. And of course, unfortunately, smokeless tobacco is in there too. We're not working, there's no bill to separate out smokeless from this, but at the very least, we should keep vaping out of this. And I would love to come back and I don't know, as soon as possible. And if everybody could renegotiate the taxes on smokeless tobacco, that would be fantastic. But we're focused on vaping right now, and 71% wholesale tax in Wisconsin is on the table. So we've, of course, included our suggested talking points for people. Share your story, talk about how other governments are doing this differently, and of course, how this disproportionately affects people who smoke, who tend to be on the lower income side of the income spectrum. If you don't like how we've laid this out here, Wisconsin's actually done a pretty decent job of showing you where the meetings are, and you can take a tour of their clicky map.
I love a good clicky map.
Yeah, we'll click on it.
Oh, look at that.
There you go. There's all the information for you for that one thing. But I put it in a nice handy list for everybody, so you've got that. So this month, if you can make it to a Wisconsin budget hearing, definitely take this opportunity. And of course, another submit your comments portal is available. So even if you are unable to show up at a hearing, you can still fill out this form and have your voice heard. And the more people that do this, the better. This was something. This tax was defeated in previous years, and so I think Wisconsin can do it again. And I think Kristen, who is in Wisconsin, and thank you for keeping me alert on this and helping to provide some of the details for our alert. Do it for Kristen. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's got a comment here as well.
There is also a public use ban in here, which I did make sure was bolded in our alert, but not in my memory. So yeah, this would fold vaping into Wisconsin's Indoor Clean Air Act. And just a reminder, private businesses are capable of establishing and enforcing their own vaping policy. Exposure to secondhand vapor has not been shown to cause harms to people, to bystanders. And so there really is there's no public health emergency here with people vaping in public. And businesses for whatever reasons may want to keep vaping outside. That's totally their right. They absolutely have the power to enforce that. There is no reason for the state to step in. And just like what we were saying about taxes, this isn't going to buy anybody leverage. You're not going to say like, oh, well, yeah, okay, you can ban vaping indoors, then maybe you'll leave me alone when it comes to flavors. That's not how this works. It has not worked that way in any state. So opposition to the indoor vaping ban is also vital. So
it does a lot to affect perception as well, kind of equating the idea of equating smoking with vaping and whatnot.
Yeah, it's part of that overall narrative to confuse people about risk. And we need to stand up and fight it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So herein ends the reading of the legislative rundown.
Dang, look at you go. Just getting better and better at this every week, man. I tell you. Legislative rundown. The legislative roundup? We'll go with rundown.
I like rundown.
I like rundown too. I agree. Much better. Roundup is how you kill weeds in your lawn. All right. So what are we going to get into this week?
Well,
I don't know if I'm quite ready to rant yet.
I think we can kind of tip people off to the next thing. We don't really have this isn't an organized campaign on our part, but it certainly hit our radar. The CDC is recruiting for their Tips for Former Smokers campaign. And there are some very specific criteria. I'm trying to scroll down to the bit in our post about this. I think here we go. God, this poor woman. So the Tips from Former Smokers campaign, CDC, I think did some research into the effectiveness of this. They claim that the Tips campaign stopped like 800,000 people from quitting smoking. That's an estimate. That's not a real number. And it's not a very thorough look. There are obviously some constraints on how and what kinds of data that they can collect. But there's no real follow-up. Okay, so somebody didn't start smoking or somebody made a quit attempt because they saw this campaign. How are they doing now? It's been a couple of years. Did they stick with it, or were they feeling the crushing blow of all the stigma from this campaign? It's one of those things that kind of walks the line between actually encouraging people to quit smoking. It's sort of veiled under that. These are helpful tips, and they're coming to you from people who have lived through tremendous battles to stay alive because of their smoking history, or likely because of their smoking history. It is just kind of a shock and fear campaign, dressed up in a pretty package. but Brad Rodu, of course, has his take on this, that it's really just a pressure campaign. There is no real information being offered here, and it does not give people who smoke ideas or even a reference to all of the ways that they might quit smoking. And all of those ways include using smokeless tobacco, using vapor products, using nicotine pouches. That's why we're here. And so the note that was passed to me was, I think it would be really beneficial if the CDC heard from vapors. I think we can all automatically assume that your stories will be summarily dismissed. They are not interested in hearing from vapors. The CDC does not accept vaping as an alternative to smoking. CDC is notoriously anti-tobacco, despite the fact that it's supposed to be an objective, data-driven agency. They have an anti-tobacco agenda, and that is all tobacco. And so they are part and parcel of this whole narrative that all tobacco products are as dangerous as cigarettes. So it's not going to be something that makes it to air, but I kind of agree with this. If people are reviewing these applications and seeing a bunch of vapors writing in and telling your story about how you quit smoking by switching, somebody at the CDC is going to have to pay attention. And we may not see results now or tomorrow or even in this campaign, but down the line, that's something I think that will resonate with people at the CDC, people who actually do care about being on the right side of history. So by all means, I know there are plenty of people out there. I've spoken to a handful of them, people who have been able to get life-saving surgeries because they switched to vaping. This isn't something, and there's no subterfuge here. It's, the doctor says, you need a new heart, but I can't operate on you unless you quit smoking. And the person realizes their life is literally on the line. They have a short time to live and they have to do something immediately. And they try vaping and it works for them. And they come back to the doctor in a month or two and they say, hey, doc, I quit smoking. I switched to vaping. What do you think? And the doctor says, I'm going to schedule your surgery. Yeah. That is happening. Yeah, and I think those stories need to be told. We need to tell them to the CDC. That's the only way forward. I mean, we can host those stories on our website. We have an impressive collection of people's stories. But
is the CDC checking the CASAA testimonial page?
Yeah, the CDC isn't going to come to us for resources. No. If anything, they're just doing surveillance.
I wouldn't put it past them. But yeah,
I don't mean that as like a tinfoil hat kind of thing.
Is there any specific criteria for people as far as this goes, or is this like somebody like me? I didn't, suffer any major injuries. I didn't need surgery. I didn't develop COPD. I mean, I have an asthmatic. But is this a situation where I would be encouraged to do this as well? Or is this something for people who specifically may have developed diseases from smoking or injuries related to smoking and then have switched to vaping and things have improved kind of thing?
Yeah, they are specifically looking for people who have experienced a smoking attributable disease. Okay. So yeah, any of those things you mentioned, COPD, cancer, lung disease, heart disease, anything like that. And it is on the page here. We've linked to it in our blog post. So there's, two different things to kind of look for. They're looking for people who used to smoke cigarettes, have been diagnosed by a medical doctor with a smoking-related health condition, have been diagnosed by a medical doctor with a smoking-related health condition, and have a family member or other loved one who regularly takes care of you. They may feature both of you, as long as it's not like vaping.
I recognized somebody from chat earlier. I don't know if she's still here, but Michelle Hughes, I saw in chat. Hey, Michelle, is a huge advocate for people who smoke, switching over to vapor products, specifically with COPD. And I've seen her story a number of times on Twitter and things like that. So hope Michelle, get in there. Get in there and leave your comment to this for sure.
Yeah, I think we have tons of these stories throughout the
Yeah.
vaping community, and I guess every time FDA or CDC wants to do one of these casting calls for people who want to participate in some propaganda, vapors should be encouraged to show up and share their very real life stories.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For those who aren't familiar, by the way, I can't remember. I did write this down. So there's a little bit of a story here. If you're new to this and aren't familiar with all the ways that the government is government and activists at the behest of activists are distorting the truth about safer nicotine products. This campaign is actually responsible for a huge lie. Shocker. Back when it I think it was the first round of these ads, there was a woman named Crystal, I believe, and her story was that she quit smoking, she switched to vaping, and then her lung collapsed. And the way that the story was told, it gave the viewer the impression that it was vaping that was responsible for her lung collapse. This is not true. In fact, I don't know how long she vaped for. It wasn't very long, but she went back to smoking. And I mean, I couldn't blame her with all of the bad things that people are hearing about vaping. Sure. and the lack of encouragement, the limitation on good information. I don't know where she was buying the products. I don't know if there was a knowledgeable person at the vape shop talking about nicotine content and what devices and what flavors might work for her, but she didn't have the great experience that a lot of us have had, and she went back to smoking. It's totally understandable. When she went back to smoking, that's when her lung collapsed. And she also had, years of smoking history going into this. So the CDC didn't really care about the nuances of that detail or those details. They just produced this ad that made it sound like vaping was responsible for this woman's injury. And it wasn't. And you don't see that ad around anymore, I don't think. So I think it was eventually pulled. It took a while. It was kind of like the lung injury thing. It took them 4 months to come clean about that. It took them, I'm sure, probably a year or so to pull this.
CDC doesn't look like they don't want to look bad, but
no. And I'm gonna drop. I'll show. I can share the.
And there are a lot of reasons why, I don't want to say a lot, but there are a number of reasons why someone's lung could collapse, even outside of smoking. I had a friend in high school, maybe my junior year, who was at home playing Xbox, and his lung collapsed. So I mean, there's so many things that can happen. I just wanted to share that, because. Just
in case anybody wants to throw their Xbox away, ban Xbox. Your lung might collapse, but even in that, like, to just attribute it to vaping, if she vaped for a short while, that must be the reason why, and we won't look any further. We won't look for any other details. We won't look for any other medical history or other issues this person may have. We're just gonna blame vaping. Is just ludicrous. So what I have up on the screen now is, hold on, I'm sharing this with Kristen so she can share it in the chats. This is from Jim McDonald from 2015, I believe, and CASAA commented on this campaign. This was something I think in response to, there was a public comment period where, that link is not the good link. Here we go. So there was a public comment period, or an ability for us to write into the White House and sort of discourage them from funding this campaign any further. Basically, it's because it was misleading and inaccurate and obviously twisted to scare people away from smoke-free alternatives. So you can check that out on our site. And of course, hopefully Kristen can share the link around in the chats. But yeah, we've been painfully aware of this nonsense for years now, and so yeah, I think it's a great idea. If people want to share their stories with the CDC, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Especially if it happened while you're playing Xbox. Make sure that you share that.
Yeah.
There's a, I don't know what it is, what it's called. Specifically, I guess, I don't know. Don't quote me on this, but it's something like in teenagers, specifically teenage boys, tall teenage boys that grow really quickly, develop maybe like weaker spots on their lungs, which is something that we saw a few years ago with a young man who also suffered from a collapsed lung injury as well.
I don't know if that's what we've got from the chat from Dyer thing, the spontaneous pneumothorax.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tall, slender, white males, typically, I think between the ages of like 15 and 17 or 15 and 18. They are more likely, and I don't understand it, but
yeah, neither do I. That's why I said don't quote me on it. But I know that is a thing that exists. I just don't know what it's called.
Well, you and I probably learned about it because we saw these social media posts from young men in a couple different places who had their lungs collapsed, and they attributed it to vaping. They attributed it to Juul, I think specifically. I think they sued Juul. And as it turns out, they actually fit the criteria to a T for having this lung condition that is not attributable to smoking or vaping. It's just something that affects a small number of slender, white, tall men.
I brought that up because that is to a T my friend who had a collapsed lung playing Xbox. He's about 6'7". His junior year in high school, he was maybe 6'4", maybe 6'5", you know? So yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to take up a ton of more time. Kristen picked out some really great articles on the blog, and I think there's like two more things that we have time for. But really just encourage everyone to look over some of the articles that have come out in the past week. And it'll fill in some gaps here. Some of the obvious, I think, commentary on state bans backed up with some real numbers, and of course noting specifically, I'm talking about Massachusetts and what has happened there, how that information about where people are shopping now has been kind of intentionally limited to portray the flavor ban as successful, or the menthol ban as well. All of the states around Massachusetts, for those of you who are not in New England, everything's kind of close together. So hopping across geopolitical boundaries to buy things that you can't in Massachusetts is pretty easy. It was pretty easy for New York, while Massachusetts has the regulated cannabis market. There were actually shops in Western Massachusetts that extended their hours to 9 p.m. because of all the people coming in from New York.
Sure. Yeah.
So the same is true for people leaving Massachusetts, and all of New Hampshire, Connecticut. I don't know about Maine, but all of those states benefited from Massachusetts banning menthol and banning flavors.
Yeah, if you look at surrounding states, while Massachusetts is showing a decline in their sales, these other states surrounding them are showing an increase. So it doesn't, it's not rocket science to go, oh, all those people they just went over there.
Yeah. If only someone had told them.
Yeah. Yep.
So
how that works.
I guess before we get to the real fun, I did want to just bring up again, and I know we're going to see more of this, but we have another op-ed this week coming from the cannabis reform, the drug policy reform folks, not to be confused with Drug Policy Alliance, but people in the, specifically the cannabis reform movement. And the warning from them is they, make sure to keep big tobacco out of the cannabis industry. And this is we talked about this, I think, last week or the week before. And, our concerns are that these op-eds, these messages, these meetings with lawmakers, have a tendency to stray into supporting and using anti-tobacco tropes that are then being applied to vapor products. And this week we have an op-ed. It's called "Big Tobacco is Coming for Legal Marijuana," published in the Boston Globe. Shailene Title and Andy Tan teamed up and wrote this. First of all, I just want to go in as I want to set the table and say I absolutely agree with them. I think that every effort should be made to keep incumbent tobacco and alcoholic beverage companies at bay. I don't think anybody wants to see these massive corporations come in and just gobble up all of the independent cannabis operations. And that doesn't provide any equity for people, especially those who have been disproportionately affected by the drug war. And that's what this is all about. And you can fill me in on the New York stuff. So
I can try.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it, certainly. But they start with referencing Senator Chuck Schumer in New York. His statement, his quote in this op-ed is, "We don't want big tobacco or big liquor to swoop in and take over." Exactly. My question to Senator Schumer is, where was this enthusiasm when states and the FDA are shutting down all of the independent vapor companies by way of regulation or other just ridiculous laws like here in New York? I did want to kind of give a little bit of shout out and credit where credit's due. A few years ago, the New York State Vapor Association was very active in communicating with Senator Schumer, and found out ultimately his big issue was safety. He was very alarmed by the battery failures that were leading to injury and in one case death. And of course, the response to that, and I think the policy recommendation is, well, companies need to have that flexibility to innovate. There are safety innovations available on the market in other parts of the world, but they're not going to be able to get into the United States through legitimate means because of the regulations. The regulations are actually making vapor products less safe. And I think that resonated with him, and it's sort of, he seemed to have toned it down a little bit after that kind of came to light. I don't know how, I can't remember how long that lasted. Certainly not very long. But I think that Chuck Schumer kind of gets it. At least, the part of Chuck Schumer that isn't the senator that has to show up for re-election all the time. I think as an individual, I think he understands this. But it certainly has not materialized into anything super positive for the industry or the consumers. Yeah. So that's kind of where all the warm fuzzies and good feels about this op-ed stop, because they immediately go into, this is the quote: "Tobacco companies continue to target vulnerable people and profit off nicotine addiction. Altria spent $12.8 billion on Juul, a nicotine vape product that has been popular with children and fueled a public health crisis in teen vaping." The article linked in that piece is to a piece that was written in Time by Jamie Ducharme. And I went and just, I had to look at it again. It's actually a pretty fair piece. The way that it's written, it's not loaded with a lot of loaded language. She, I think, gave it somewhat of a fair shake and actually interviewed Adam Monzes and the other guy. So they did get to kind of speak up on their own behalf. And this is one of the rare articles from a few years ago that accurately represented Juul's market share. Back then, a lot of what you would hear from people is that, well, Juul has 75% of the market, 80% of the market, like whatever. That is misleading. It's not actually true. They had 70 to 80% of the convenience store channels and the places where you typically buy cigarettes, but the independent vapor companies aren't being tracked by Nielsen. And so that, for people who don't understand the products, which is like 90% of lawmakers, when they hear Juul has this enormous market share, they don't question it, because all they're thinking, they're not thinking about, how Nielsen tracks sales of these things. But
and then
Jamie Ducharme,
all vapor products just become Juul to them.
Exactly, they still are.
Yeah.
But she actually represented this, I think, more accurately. And I think 2017, 2018 into 20, I can't remember which year it was, but that was the year that the closed system products that you find in convenience stores actually took more than half of the market share. But for a long time, it was the independent retailers that were selling more than half of the vapor products. It just wasn't tracked. It's all estimate. But these are estimates, and this is information crunched by Bonnie Herzog, formerly of Wells Fargo, and the tobacco and cannabis is what she specialized in. And I don't know how to. I can share this a little bit. This is a slide presentation from one of Bonnie's presentations. You can Google the name Wall Street Tobacco Industry Update. This is from 2019. It's a pretty informative slideshow. So check it out if you've got some time. I'm not going to narrate it for you. But a couple notable quotes here in 2000 running into. So this is 2018 going into 2019. 30% of retailers attribute cigarette volume softness to e-cigarette conversions and dual use. Another note here is that Gen Z isn't smoking. Cigarettes are too expensive. It's also not cool. And a lot of people are just moving to vape. Notably, at the same time that FDA is moving to suppress vapor products. So anyway, that's a very interesting slideshow with some good details in it. But as far as coming back to the op-ed and everything that we were very concerned about, they are unfortunately participating in this moral panic about vapor products and using vaping as a way to point to the malfeasance or the bad actions of tobacco companies, and specifically Juul. You can make this argument without throwing vaping under the bus. That's, I think, the message that needs to be sent here. And ultimately, when I boil this down, what it sounds like to me is they're asking for federal regulation. I mean, that ultimately they're asking for a law to keep big tobacco out of the cannabis space. And I think I'm not the person really to give this warning, but my gut reaction is be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the Tobacco and Cannabis Control Act, that's probably what you're going to get. A lot of the suggestions here about making sure that people aren't adding crazy ingredients to make marijuana more addictive, which is something this is a matter of public record. This is documented. Tobacco companies absolutely did do this. And the fear is that they will do the same to cannabis. A lot of vapors have the same concerns about vapor products made by Reynolds or Altria or Philip Morris or BAT, whatever. People believe that tobacco companies are adding chemicals to these products to hook people faster. Look, man, the thing about Juul is there's no secret. It's nicotine salts. And if anybody in the vapor industry is thinking like, oh, well, they're so bad for doing it, then explain to me how all of these bottles of nicotine salt liquid came onto the market after 2016.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting out of this, unscathed or without a call out. The industry did the same thing. So it's
absolutely.
If you're worried about tobacco companies putting chemicals in your vapor products, just remember they have to go through the PMTA process. That will weed out things like this. And I suspect ultimately what the authors are asking for here is something very similar for cannabis at the federal level. And if past is prologue, what we've seen in the vapor industry is that it's all been handed over to the majors. We'll see whether or not that continues as we hopefully see approvals for things made by independent vapor companies. But as it stands right now, everything's coming up big tobacco because of the regulations. So anyway, my hot take on the op-ed, a little bit of encouragement and agreement, but ultimately a word of caution, that I think, in terms of throwing the vaping community, Juul is very much a part of the vaping community, whether people accept it or not. And throwing the vaping community under the bus to make a point about tobacco and cannabis, I think is ultimately counterproductive. So that's my rant for the week. And yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think you're in a better position to talk about it than I am. What about this crappy Marvel campaign?
Okay. So I have a lot of thoughts here. Yeah. So Marvel has, I don't know, struck a deal, I guess, to do this mini series, which is going to portray vaping as this monster that is taking over high schools and turning teenagers into mindless zombies. For everyone out there, specifically everyone out there on Twitter that I've been seeing talking about this, in all of their shock and disgust that Marvel, who would never ever do anything wrong ever, is putting this out. I have some news for you. Marvel has been doing things just like this since the 70s. So for a little bit of history, 1970, 1971, right around the dawn of Nixon's drug war, Stan Lee went against the Comic Book Code Authority, which prior to that stated that drug use in any way, drugs or drug use, was not allowed in comic books. Whether it was positive, negative, couldn't have it. Stan Lee decided to take on drug addiction, and I believe it was first through Spider-Man or something like this, went against the Comic Book Code Authority and started talking about addiction, releasing issues and these little PSAs that you would find in Marvel Comics. DC followed shortly after. Regardless, this challenged the Comic Book Code Authority, and they ended up changing their rules to say that, yeah, you can now talk about drugs, but only in a negative light. That's it. You can never talk about drugs being beneficial. And that's the way it still stays today, which is also extremely hypocritical, because I don't know how many superheroes got their powers from drugs, but Captain America is a great example of one. I don't know what super soldier serum looks like, but I would assume at the end of the day, it's a drug that they gave him. But this is typical. This is something that we've seen for decades, and it's always a sponsored thing, whether it's through an NGO, a nonprofit, or through a public health agency. This is absolutely nothing new. It's the same old drug tropes. It's the same old propaganda that Marvel, or in this case Marvel, but DC has done it plenty of times as well. They've done it for years. I mean, we've seen some decent PSAs through the years. Then there's been PSAs on wearing helmets when you ride a bike, making sure you brush your teeth to prevent tooth decay, don't step on landmines. I don't know how many issues there've been on landmines, but there's a number of them. And this is just another one of those. Sure, we'll take all this money and we'll run your PSA and we'll make a comic book out of it so we can teach and educate our youth to be safer and better adults or whatever. Well, at the same time, throughout the decades, these anti-drug PSAs that they've done have been not evidence-based whatsoever. There's been multiple ones depicting people taking whatever drug and then jumping off of rooftops or going insane, all sorts of completely evidence-free things. It's all very stigmatizing. A number of issues throughout the years have referred to people who use drugs as junkies or addicts. Telling kids you don't want to be a junkie, things like this, just really dehumanizing, stigmatizing language. And this is just another one of those things. This is absolutely nothing new from Marvel. So anybody out there who's shocked by this, I'm really sorry to bum you out here, but this is absolutely nothing new. I love comic books. I love Marvel. I love superheroes. I love DC. this is something that it hits me right in the heart as well. There's a lot of people that I know that are just appalled by this right now. And I'm like, well, I know where you're coming from. I feel your pain, but it's nothing new. It's absolutely nothing new. And it's really just a shame. But at the end of the day, this is just Marvel making money and listening to, public health organizations. And I would say, honestly, I don't think that it's a malicious attack on vaping. I don't think it's anything like it's simply them listening to public health and taking money to do this. That's what it boils down to, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Marvel and them, I don't think they have a real tough stance and a political stance on tobacco harm reduction and things like that. I think this is simply, like I said, just them listening to our public health officials and accepting some money to go along with it.
Yeah, I guess so. And I'm not as steeped in the lore of the Marvel and DC universes. I've watched a couple movies and it's eye candy, which is fun. But for a genre that celebrates the outsider and people who tend to be overlooked by society or pushed to the margins by society, this is really tone deaf. I don't care how much money you're making. It just seems like,
there's never a whole lot of substance to these things, these PSAs and things that Marvel or DC or whatever has run over the years. There's never much substance to it, and that's exactly what this is. It's never evidence-based, just like this one is not evidence-based in any way. Teenagers in high school, if they are vaping, they're not mindless zombies that have no self-control, no self-awareness. And they're not wandering around, fumbling over things, looking for vapor products to gorge themselves on. Like this is just really, really disingenuous to people who have quit smoking. Just in general, or to people who are vaping. This is just disingenuous to people in general, to people who have dealt with addiction and things like this. Like it's just, we're in 2021 now. And I think that's what upsets me the most is that Marvel is still just going along with this. And I saw a point in chat, Marvel is owned by Disney now. Sure. Okay, great. Wonderful. It doesn't excuse any of this at all. If it were up to me, I would just say, stick to what you're doing and don't worry about public health. You're a comic book company. You make movies about people who fly, about people who have been made into superheroes by drugs. Just stay out of it. It's not your concern. You don't need this money. Again, you're owned by Disney. Why do you need this money for this PSA? I think money is probably irrelevant, but most companies want to make money, so they do it however they can. That's the point of being a company. A for-profit company is to make profits. But just like, why? What good does this do? It doesn't do any good. And
Disney, by the way, a company that over the years is, I'm fairly confident in saying, made quite a lot of money. Playing off of racial stereotypes and
absolutely,
and all kinds of things. So not only a bad look for Marvel Comics, but a pretty bad look for FDA.
This is a really bad look for FDA, right? They've got their stamp on this.
This is like what, the second or third round of the Real Cost campaign. People will remember the brain worms, which was actually presented at the Food, Drug, and Law Institute. I want to say Kathleen Crosby is she's in charge of the kind of media campaign relations department or whatever it is. And she gave this presentation at FDLI that was like, we tested this on adults and came to the conclusion that no adult should ever see this campaign. And FDA came out with this all. It's laser targeted. We're micro targeting young people.
Adults will never see this.
I've heard from parents who are stay at home parents, and they're doing laundry or getting lunch ready or dinner or something like that when the kids come home from school, and of course they're watching the same TV channels that they're watching, and and now mom and dad are being exposed to this nonsense, and that's happening.
And I don't know what FDA thinks
country.
that no parent is ever going to supervise or watch what their children watch. But that's part of parenting. I can tell you firsthand. You know, I don't literally hover over my children at all times and watch everything that they consume, but I have an open ear. You know, I'm listening. I'm keeping an eye out for things. So absolutely, parents are going to get exposed. There's no doubt in my mind that parents get exposed to these things. Addie Tooney in chat said curiosity is #1 reason youth try vaping. Not very educated move, Marvel. Sure. I mean, this is DARE, right? This is a prime DARE 2.0 example. How many youth who really could care less about vaping, don't even know what it is, are now going to be exposed to this and then told, you know, you're going to become a mindless zombie. If I was 13 right now, 14 years old, and I saw this and I went, that stuff's just going to turn me into a mindless zombie. Pff, prove it. Let's see it.
Yeah,
I'll try it. You know what I mean? And now I'm going to go try it just out of pure curiosity, because maybe cool, I'll turn into a zombie. What a great Sunday afternoon, you know? And like, that's the thing with all of these, it raises curiosity. It raises, you know, temptation to try this product, to see if these claims are true, just because youth are rebellious. And then from there, when you don't turn into a mindless school wandering zombie gorging on vapor products that needs to be saved by superheroes, when that doesn't actually happen, you start to question the other things that you've been told along the way as well. And this creates distrust in our public health system.
Yeah. And of all the times in the past 100 years that we need to safeguard the public trust in public health officials, it's probably right now.
Yeah, right now.
Man, we are just, so much misinformation is out there. Just, I mean, pick a subject, and so many people believe in that information. It's unfortunate. And of course, you know, the agencies are just sort of willingly signing up to contradict themselves at a not too distant date.
Yeah. I mean, how is this going to look for FDA, you know, down the road here when products are approved? And then they go, well, wait a minute, didn't you just say we were all going to turn into zombies?
Yeah. I do want to I want to touch on Jeffrey Zamora's question about how much FDA paid for this. This is through the Center for Tobacco Products at FDA, and the Center for Tobacco Products is funded by user fees, not taxpayer dollars. Mm-hmm. So this was in a way paid for by tobacco companies. Yeah. If you want to know the origins of who actually paid for this campaign, yeah, it was cigarette makers. So yeah, ultimately, it kind of makes perfect sense. I mean, that is a ridiculous way to frame this. There's no way that Reynolds and Altria had any hand in making this campaign, but in a roundabout way, and almost in a direct way, they paid for it.
Yeah, I don't think that there was absolutely anything useful or is still useful about the DARE program. Dire thing. I don't think there's anything useful about the DARE program.
Yeah, I don't know if they've like refurbished it or not.
I know that they have a functional operating website. I know that exists, but I don't know as though DARE officers and things like that are going around to schools. I don't know. Possibly.
They lost federal funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, the science came out that it was actually making kids more curious about drugs, and
sure.
The federal government stopped funding the program.
So I have a story. It's not a personal story, but it's a story that I was told by my architectural CAD teacher when I was in high school, that when he was teaching in a different school, and a DARE officer came in and a police officer came into the classroom, talking about drugs, specifically cannabis was the big topic that day. And the officer actually brought 2 rolled joints with him to the class to pass around and show to kids. This is what it looks like. This is what it smells like, like that. So, that's a terrible idea just to begin with. Like, I don't know who came up with this plan to go into classrooms and show a bunch of kids who've probably never even seen a joint or heard of cannabis to begin with, and then literally put it in their hand to show it to them. But that officer passed around 2 pre-rolled joints and got 3 back. So I was waiting for the effectiveness of DARE right there in a nutshell.
I was waiting for like one of the kids to raise their hand and say something like, "I thought the government had the good weed. This is dirt, man."
Yeah, no. one of those joints smelled way better than the other two. But yeah, passed around two of them and got 3 back.
That's amazing. I mean, that's one of those, like, it's not a pressure sale kind of thing, but if you want someone to buy something, put it in their hand.
Sure.
They don't want to give it back if it's good.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you put a joint in my hand, I mean, come on. Depending on what kind of day I've had, you might not get it back. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, Dare's just been a massive failure since the get-go's. Again, raised curiosity for kids and youth and teenagers that had no interest in these things prior to that, no knowledge of these things. And then on top of that, the information that was given were your typical drug tropes. Marijuana is a gateway to crack cocaine. And if you smoke crack cocaine once, you're going to be homeless and your life will be over and everything's going to go bad. And it's just misinformation. It's fear mongering. And it's the same old drug tropes all wrapped into this vaping menace that's taking over high schools now. And it's not useful. It's disingenuous. It hurts youth in the long run. Their trust in public health, what's real, what's not. And then if they try it again, they go, oh, this wasn't too bad. I was lied to clearly about that. They're lying to me about what else? Let's go try everything else and find out what they're lying about. That's been the same story for decades now. So, yeah. In Latin America, Jeffrey Zamora said, in Latin America, if you used drugs back in those days, it was cool to wear the Dare shirts. Sure. Absolutely. But yeah, it's just a big shame that that FDA is putting this out, and I don't know. It's just terrible. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But it's nothing new, and I think that's the big point that I wanted to make for people out there, that this is absolutely nothing new from companies like Marvel and DC and things like that. And I think a lot of times, they think they're doing something in good faith or there's good intentions here or whatever. But in the long run, it's not helpful. It's actually more harmful. And I just wish they would all stop doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be nice to see some pushback from.
And remember to watch out for landmines, kids. Remember to watch out for landmines.
Yeah.
Seriously, there's like a whole dozen different issues on the horrors and dangers of landmines. And I'm sure there are places in the world where warnings and things like this are very necessary. We definitely need to know about it. But your kids in, I don't know, downtown Chicago or whatever, I would assume don't need to know anything about landmines. It's probably not very helpful. And it probably actually just creates a lot of fear in kids. I mean, I can specifically think of an issue. This is DC now, but Batman holding like a child who died. And it's like graphic, and that's the cover of it. And it's like the horrors of landmines. Like, could we be a little more subtle? Could we just really, like, is this necessary? I don't know if it's necessary or not. But again, it's just nothing new. I think that's the big point. Like, everybody's in this state of like shock right now that this, the superhero company, the people that gave us Iron Man, who, at one point there was a long running issue about Tony Stark's problems with alcohol and things like this. Like, they've been doing this for a really, really long time. And it's never helpful. It's never accurate. It never depicts anything in the real world. It doesn't teach anybody how to do anything safer. I can tell you that. I'll take it back. It is always abstinence-based messaging. And we know how well that goes. Nancy Reagan just say no.
It's not like the premise of any of these comics really lends itself to negotiation. It is always sort of that there is that stark contrast, that dichotomy of good and evil, and the only way to fix it is with superpowers or super weapons. There's always some element of violence involved. So yeah, the comic book company's not known for dealing with nuance and complexity. No. Just bring out the guns and the laser eyes. That'll fix it.
Those comics were paid for. Yeah, they're all sponsored. They're all sorts of things. And a lot of them are good, right? But I'm sure there's a better way to target that messaging across the board as opposed to through comic books. I'm sure that there are much better ways to spend that money. I'm sure there are much better ways to run those campaigns.
Yeah, how about giving kids some real tools to navigate life so they don't find themselves super stressed out under tons of pressure to succeed? and maybe they can navigate high school in a much more productive and healthy way, and maybe they'll be less likely to turn to substance use. And when they become adults, they'll be able to approach it with a much more critical frame of mind.
Yeah, like that. The money spent on this campaign, that money could have gone to improving mental health services in schools.
Yeah.
That would have been an actually beneficial way to spend that money to help our youth, as opposed to fear mongering, scare tactics, lying, and ultimately stigmatizing people that use nicotine. And it's just disingenuous. It's just offensive.
So we're in an hour and 15 here. I think we've gone a little over our usual time, but I did extend an invitation to anybody from the PAVe conference that happened this week. That one-way slideshow of all the things that we just talked about. So if anybody has questions, we can open it up to the chats. And of course, if anybody took me up on our invitation to come join us, this is not a one-way conversation. We're happy to hear opposing opinions and viewpoints. That's how this works. So if we got anything,
I guess we can give it a few minutes. Do you have any fun plans this weekend, Alex? What do you got going on this weekend?
Well, they're racing under the lights at Martinsville tonight.
Ooh. Saturday night?
I already rearranged my office, so that was my big fun project for the afternoon.
I know, you're inspiring me now. I'm like, look, I set this whole office up just to do this, and then Alex moved things around. He looks all cleaned up and fancy over here, and I'm still just over here in the same dark corner.
But your space looks fine to begin with, so I mean.
Well, thank you. I just painted it recently.
Yeah, it looks great.
It's been this color for a little while now. It used to be like a terrible cream tan color. It was really gross. But
excellent. I will say also, I need to get outside at some point. It is absolutely gorgeous up here today. I think we're in the mid to upper 70s. So winter is officially over in the North Country.
Gone. Yeah. It's done and over. It's gone. I went to work this morning, so I had enough time outside. Spent about 5 hours out in the sun this morning working. So I won't be spending any more time outside today, but tomorrow, absolutely. I got a bunch of yard work to do. I got to mow for the first time this year. My grass is finally starting to get a little bit long. It's that season again, and I've got to get all my flower beds done and mulched and things.
So, man, you're like what, 5-6 hours away from me, and our grass has just started growing.
Yeah.
So
okay. So the real problem is that I kind of neglected it right at the end of the year. You know, I didn't do that final cut. I was like, man, it's about to snow. I'm not going to mow my lawn anymore this year. I'll take care of it in the spring. And then this past week, we've gotten just enough rain and sunshine. And there's this perfect combination where the grass around here just takes right off. And that's what we've had. So now I'm like, damn, now I got to get out there. It's looking a little wild, but yeah, that's going to be my day tomorrow. Is just going to be a lot of outside projects, getting things cleaned up and ready to go. So
I will abruptly take it back to the Q&A session and answer Dire Thing's question. What did PAVe do now? For those who don't know the acronym, it's Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes. They had a conference. It was a one-day kind of thing sponsored by the likes of CVS and tons of other, I don't know how much it costs to put on a Zoom conference call live on YouTube. It costs for us to do this podcast and use StreamYard. It's, I think, $240 a year. So, I'm not, reaching out for CVS to sponsor this. I would never ask them for anything. But it was a very well-heeled.
You don't want to be you don't want to be like Marvel here and just take money, from wherever just because.
Well, we don't need it for $240. Our members can scrape that out of their couch cushions.
I will scrape it out of my couch cushions right now to prevent us from having to deal with CVS.
Yeah, and thank you. But I know they wouldn't donate to a pro harm reduction organization anyway.
Why would they?
But so the Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes held this one-way conversation. The funny thing about it is that when it was announced, if you wanted to register, you had to go through their site, and they asked you all those questions like, do you receive money from the tobacco industry? Does a family member receive money from the tobacco? Do you know somebody who receives money from the tobacco industry? Have you ever thought about smoking? Like that's not a real question, but those types of, right. They have the purity test up front, and you had to answer yes, and then you could register. The funny thing is that it ended up being broadcast live on YouTube without having to go through the screening. There were actually, people who I know who work for tobacco companies that were watching and commenting throughout the event. And it was, at some point they shut down the comments on YouTube because, well, it was a bunch of people who vape who were calling them on their nonsense. And so CASAA's response to that, and I think all of our responses to that, is like, we would love to have an open and honest conversation with you guys about this. And this is one of those forums where we can do it. I'm not a mean person. I don't typically like talking down to people or making fun of folks. I mean, unless they really deserve it, Marvel Comics. So
I will talk down on Stan Lee's legacy over all of this.
Yeah,
but yeah,
so yeah, it was nonsense. It was a full day of just sort of repeating the lies that we've all become accustomed to, and doing it with. They had some pre-recorded hostage videos with I think Dick Blumenthal, it's Richard Blumenthal. Yeah, from Connecticut. They had a couple lawmakers show up, the usual cast of characters. And of course, Stanton Glantz got a lot of attention. The man who had a heart issue. God, I'm losing my words.
About
the study about heart attacks, and a lot of the data, it was found that these were heart attacks that happened before someone switched to vaping, likely attributable to smoking. And so there was a big kind of drama about getting that retracted. It stayed up for a while too. Of course, once they find out or have any suspicion that any of the researchers on any of these articles has been funded by a tobacco company in any way, current or in the past, they'll rip that stuff off the site immediately. But of course, there was a bit of a battle trying to get this bogus research from Stanton Glantz taken down. And so, of course, he was featured prominently in all of this, not apparently not disgraced enough. And I don't know why people still invite him to things, but they did. So yeah, Paul, it was a train wreck.
Yeah, I didn't tune into it. I didn't see much about it, but I've read plenty of people's opinions on how it went down. From what I understand, they were actively deleting comments during the stream, like live deleting comments, from proponents of tobacco harm reduction, vaping, and things like this. So yeah, it's very much it's their closed silo of anti-THR rhetoric. Like these folks, it's just them. They're in their bubble, and they don't want other opinions. They don't want other people present. They don't want to have actual discussions. They just want to parrot these talking points over and over and over again. If you say it enough times, Alex, it's true. It becomes truth. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
Say it enough times.
Repeat the lie until it becomes the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what it was. Like, I didn't watch it. I didn't tune in. I don't give a whole lot of attention to PAVe, and I try to avoid it because they just make me so angry. And I'm trying to be a more pleasant person when I communicate these things. So like, I just couldn't do it. But thank you for everybody who took one for the team and tuned into that.
Yeah, and it's an open invitation. Join us on the podcast. Join us in the chat. PAVe, any of these folks. I was on a panel with Matt Myers and Cliff Douglas at E-Cigarette Summit a couple of years ago, that there's some sort of faux engagement that happens between panelists, but even that is, I don't particularly agree with anything that Matt Myers has to say, but he did come and attend the conference under conditions, but it was still somebody came out of their silo and decided to see what was actually going on in the world.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I would be more than happy to have a discussion. I've tried, through social media and things like that, through trying to engage respectfully, and it's never gone anywhere. But I would happily invite Meredith Berkman and the rest of PAVe to join us on the show to have one of these discussions. I would absolutely love to do that.
yeah, you can come on our podcast, and then we can come on yours. It'll be
they do have a podcast.
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
I'm sure funded by Bloomberg or CVS or something like that.
Well,
so
we can talk about that while we're on their show.
It must be a very high quality podcast.
Yeah, I listened to like 5 minutes of their first episode when they dropped it, and then I just stopped. I just didn't. I couldn't. It's painful. But yeah, so I guess that's we're well approaching the hour and a half mark here. I know that we've already put it out there about questions and comments. I don't know if maybe Kristen has any more that she wanted to pull up, if she spotted any along the way. But we're definitely approaching the tail end of our day here, our stream.
Do you have the outro lined up and ready to go?
I do, you guys. I have an outro this week. All right. So we had it last week and I dropped the ball. Okay. I apologize. I'm not a very good live streamer. I'm the guy that edits the podcasts later. but I do have an outro. So I don't know. Are you ready to wrap this up this week? Do we have anything else from chat that we want to go over? Addy Tooney.
Thank you.
Thank you, Addy Tooney. Just a fantastic human being over there. Just a great advocate. Much love to you, sir.
I do want to give a quick shout out. I'm not going to name names because I know that we shouldn't, but I did want to give a quick shout out to someone in our moderators, the folks that moderate our Facebook pages. They caught a bad link in one of our engagements last night. I thought everything was cool. And every now and then I had a thing where I would always forget to do one thing. And I seem to be back on that with the new platform that we're using. So thank you for pointing out the link. I was able to fix it. It was something, I think it was for, was it for Texas? Yeah, I think it was for Texas. So anyway, thank you to our volunteers for double checking our work and making sure all of our T's are crossed, I's dotted, and links in the right place.
Yeah, something really cool must have been happening on a racetrack, which distracted Alex.
No,
I don't know. I'm trying to help you out here. I'm trying to make you sound better.
It was just Friday night, and needed to be.
Are there any races on Fridays? Again, I'm not a race guy. I don't know.
No, typically no, they're not. Well, not races that I can watch. I don't have like super cable or anything, so I catch them on the regular networks.
Yeah, you got to get the super cable.
Yeah,
I don't have any cable. I have no cable. Yes, click the button, click the likes, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, so that way you guys know every week when we go live. It's 4:30 p.m. Eastern, and then time zones, which I'm terrible at. But 4:30 p.m. Eastern every Saturday, me and Alex will be here going over all the fun legislative rundowns. I keep going for rundowns.
Either one works. It's a collection of legislative alerts and so on.
I'm gonna end up combining them. It's gonna be like a legislative run-up or a round down, something.
Whatever. We'll just add it to the mix.
Yeah, perfect. All right. I guess that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for being here with us. Please share this around. Again, subscribe, like, all the good things. And if you haven't yet, please join CASAA. You can do that over at CASAA.org. All the links for everything that me and Alex discussed this week will be available in the SoundCloud description, as well as the descriptions here on YouTube and on Facebook. So you guys will be able to go over to the blog. Like Alex said, there's things in the blog that we didn't cover. Plenty of good stuff for you guys to continue, reading into, checking over, things like that. Make sure if you're in any of the states with a call to action going on right now, please get engaged, participate in those calls to action. And I don't know. I guess that's it for me. Do you got any final thoughts, Alex?
No, I think we covered a lot, and we'll see you next week.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Stay safe, everybody. Take care of each other. Be excellent to each other. We'll see you later. Bye.
See ya.